We are pleased to work together with C-Suite Analytics today on this webinar. I'm Chris Clark, Health and Safety Consultant for Cove Risks. Some of you know me. I've been doing this for about 30 years, specifically working for these groups since 1998. And throughout these years, we've seen many improvements in the world of safety. That includes engineering controls. Companies have done better with administrative controls. PPE has made strides. We've seen lots of improvements across the board. Some of you may have experienced it yourself. For instance, things like robotics. We now see robotics where, it used to be a job where employees would do the work. Now we have robotics in place doing that. We have GPS systems that allow companies to track their drivers and how they are performing on the road, whether they're speeding, if they're hard braking, accelerating too much, if they're wearing their seatbelts. They have cameras, things that allow us to hold people accountable for their actions when it comes to safety. Many companies out there providing employee safety training software and other data analytics. And with all those advancements, you'd think that we'd have injuries under control. And really, we still struggle, obviously, throughout the country. It's not just the Massachusetts thing. And with all those advancements, why have we not eradicated worker injuries and workers' comp claims? And there's many factors, as you probably know. But I think our most glaring challenge is that we have people that have different personalities. Personalities are hard to manage. And nowadays, it's not enough just to have a paycheck. You have to go above and beyond. People need to feel valued. And that worker attitude we're seeing is definitely directly connected to the injuries that our clients have, the members in our groups experience, and the outcomes of those claims. Some claims that are side by side identical might result in return to work the same day, where someone else might be out for 4 weeks. Lots of different things that go in there, but usually it's the personality of the person and how you manage that personality. And that's how I got to really thinking, not really what it brings me to how I got to know Dick and Tim here from C-Suite Analytics. And the story is that we had a claims review with one of our longest term members of any of our groups in our nursing home group, the Massachusetts Care Self-Insurance Group. They've been in since the very beginning, since 1991, and have had years of success, but recently run into 3 very successful years. And we were on a claims call, and I asked the HR director, what's going on? What are we seeing? What's different? Is there anything you can conclude as to the reason you guys are seeing such good workers' comp success? And she said, well, actually, Chris, yes, we're doing something called stay interviews. And I've never heard of a stay interview, but she directly connected it to lower turnover, improved employee to employer or management to employee communication is improved. And they felt there was a direct impact on safety. They felt like that was the reason that they're seeing better safe activities and actions out of their employees and commitment to policies. So I had to learn more. I was like, what the heck is a stay interview? Did a little research. I found Dick Finnegan and C-Suite Analytics. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Dick and Tim from C-Suite, and please enjoy the webinar. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you, Chris. And hi, everybody. My name is Dick Finnegan, and welcome. And Tim Jurgensen is joining me, and Tim will introduce himself in just a minute. But I want to tell you what you're in for. You're in for an invention. So picture, like the classic movie thing where you pull a sheet off a statue and here's the new thing. So it's a new thing. And I'm going to today, with Tim's help, show you how to reduce everything on that screen, how to reduce workforce injuries, how to drive retention, how to increase engagement, and how to increase profitability. And it's hard to believe we can do all that in the remainder of an hour, but we're going to do it. And what I'm going to show you is research. I'm going to show you what really stops turnover. And if you stop turnover and you build better relationships, all these things happen. So bear with me. We're going to have fun. I tend to go fast because I know the brain works faster than the ears. Uh, but let's get started. And by the way, just thanks for being here. I'm so glad that so many of you have so much interest. So here's the background. I am a therapist. And by the way, I live in Florida. I live in a suburb of Orlando, which is where I am now. Tim lives in just outside of Indianapolis. So I'm a therapist who became an HR executive who left. So I became a recovering HR executive. But when I was there, and I worked for a big banking company, the CEO called me in and said, turnover's high, go fix it. And it was a shuddering moment for me because I knew we had done all the things companies do, but I also knew that giving this some time, that in a bank, so picture a branch of a bank, the only variable is the manager. It's really like a almost borderline pristine academic study. The bricks are the same, the shingles are the same, the chairs are the same, the pay is the same, benefits, same products, everything's the same. But we had this tremendous differential, 85% turnover here, 15% there. And so we solved it. And I'm telling you, we solved it. And the thing we did to solve it had nothing to do with HR. We just said to the managers, you have a goal, go make it, you're accountable. And they grumbled. I jokingly say everything they said back ended in sucks. The pay sucks, the benefits suck, you suck. But they did it because we held them accountable to do it. And it really opened my eyes at kind of early in my career. And I realized, so think of it this way. If you're in accounting and you come to work, you have a set of processes you follow every day. You're an accountant, this is what you do. If you're in purchasing, if you're a lawyer, you have processes, things you do. If you're charged to cut turnover, you don't have processes. What you have is best practices. I almost do like the finger quote thing. Here's an article, this company did this, we should go do it. And everybody's chasing their tail trying to do all those things. So what I'm going to do today is teach you what to do. And my background, by the way, I've worked all around the world doing this: China, Africa, African gold mines, been commissioned by the CIA, written a whole bunch of books you can see up there. We'll skip all that stuff. But here's what we won't skip is results. So depending on industry, and we represented all industries on this slide, you can see United Facilities forklift drivers, 58% upper left. Go bottom right, Cisco forklift drivers, 29%. You go manufacturing, Clayton Homes, 60 factories, 60, turnover down 36%. We've saved them so far $18 million. Middle bottom is people who sort and pick up trash. Waste Connection is down 30%. Wayne Sanderson, middle up is chicken processing, 25 chicken processing plants. Cut them in half. Now you get the healthcare, which I know many of you are in. Got Mount Sinai, upper right, 43% nurse turnover reduced. Bottom left, Covenant Health, 31%. Some of you here on this call might be in Covenant Health. And Tim Jorgensen is the recovering, the CHRO of Covenant Health until last September when he joined us. And Tim, this is a good spot for you to introduce yourself and tell a little bit more that you think would interest the group here based on our topic.
Sure. And hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be on this call with you. I've been in a chief HR officer role for probably the past, up until last September when I worked for C-Suite Analytics for probably the past 12 years in 3 different healthcare organizations. And prior to that, I was in an executive role with both Lilly and Cummins Engine, actually, in between all of that. During COVID at Covenant Health, we had tremendous issues with retention. Obviously, anybody in healthcare probably experienced that. And we knew we weren't going to be able to buy our way out of the market or recruit our way out of the market. We knew that we needed to depend on our leaders to make our team members want to stay. And I've known Dick Finnegan for probably 12 years now, around when he was publishing his first book. and or one of his first books. And as you can see, the impact was amazing. But that's just part of the story. And when Chris was talking earlier in the call about the couple of facilities in the New England area, a couple of post-acute care facilities that had experienced some pretty dramatic reduction, sustained reduction in workers' comp claims. It was two of the Covenant Health facilities, and we have 21 that across 7 states that engaged in this, and they were just talking about what had changed. So it wasn't just retention; it was a lot of other things in terms of those workers' comp claims, reduced applications for leave, reduced amount of time people are away on leave, all types of metrics related to that, patient SAT scores that dramatically climbed, just all kinds of operational related results, in addition to the turnover results. It was pretty stunning to see that result. And I've worked with Dick in other organizations as well, seeing similar results. So it was pretty easy when we had our challenge to give Dick a call. And then Chris unsolicitedly, heard about it as he was talking to his folks. So, but that's a little bit about me. And as you can tell, I'm quite passionate about this. And what a great place for me to be in to share results that are all about our mission.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Tim, cut in all along the way, okay? Join in with
Happy.
thoughts. Right? So I'm going to time myself 2-minute departure to tell you all what's going on data-wise in terms of the employment market. And you might find some of this data that you want to share it with your executives. So this is the percent of people who voluntarily quit year to year, going all the way back to coming out of the Great Recession in 2009. And you can see, and the key to me is always 2019, because that's the year before the pandemic. So 2019, 28% voluntarily quit. The economist said, gosh, it can never get worse than this. It would be really bad. So we had a pandemic. It came down to 24%, but then it rocketed. And now it's sitting, as you can see, at the end of the year at 29%. So lots of people continue to quit. The big driver is open jobs. This chart is in thousands. So if you look at the orange, it says 2023, end of 2023, 9 million open jobs in the country. Now it's about 8.6 million. But if you go back to 2019, you got 6.7 million. We just did many more open jobs through this period of time than we've ever had, because we came back so strong from the pandemic, and lots of people had lots of money, and frankly, they still do. The key thing, though, is during the pandemic, we lost 3.5 million fewer workers. 3.5 million. That's why it's so hard to fill the jobs. There's more jobs, but we keep losing people. We lost people because two ongoing things. The US birth rate has been below the replacement rate, the number of kids a woman has to have across the nation to keep the population even. We've been below that rate for 54 years. So there's no more families of 5 kids. But we also know historically that Gen Z, Gen X, millennials are less loyal. There's data. They don't stay so long. Baby boomers like me stay an average of 8 years, 3 months. Millennials stay an average of 2 years, 9 months. Gen Z stays an average 2 years, 3 months. By 2025, that used to be a long way away. It's like 7 months from now, 75% of the workforce will be millennials. But that's probably most of you. But COVID-19, we had all that brewing. Everybody knew that was going on. But COVID-19 brought on 2 million people who instantly, within 6 months of COVID, said, I'm retiring, who had no intention to retire. they're gone. We had over 1 million people die, but 25% of them are ages 18 to 64. They're working ages. They're gone. But the big thing that nobody seems to understand is how many people during the pandemic put out their shingle and said, I'm not working for a corporation anymore. And the only metric is people who got business licenses. It doesn't include the 4 million Uber and Lyft drivers. It doesn't include the people who are dog sitting who used to work in a restaurant. So in the gig economy, by millions, people are going into the gig economy, which means you will never hire them because they're not coming back to the workforce, the corporate workforce. So we got all this stuff going on. 3 quotes. Wall Street Journal, 22 of 52 economists said, never going to get better. Time Magazine said, it's just going to get worse. Then at the bottom, you see, if we don't improve immigration, we will never win. We'll never win. The Census Bureau says in 2030 will be the first of forever where more than half the new entrants to age 18 to 64 will have been born outside the US. So here you go. I do a weekly targeting turnover blog. Today's, by the way, it always comes out on Tuesday, is about this meeting. But you can see last week, without immigrants, US working age population would shrink. So it's all relevant to us, right? Because it's hard to find workers, but it's harder to find workers who we want to keep and keep them. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So 2 ways to cut turnover. And I speak at a lot of conferences. I speak at all the big SHRM conferences if you're in HR. And I begin with this slide. And I say, raise your arm if this is what you do to cut turnover. You do engagement surveys, exit surveys, salary surveys, benefit surveys, employee committees. You get your engagement survey results. They say employees want more recognition. You get an employee committee. They meet 3 times. They do a presentation. And they say, we got it. Employee of the month, employee of the year, employee appreciation week. Get a backpack at 5 years. You get a clock at 10. This will solve it. If I showed you Gallup data, Gallup is the grandfather of employee surveys. If I showed you Gallup data from when they started in the year 2000. So we have 24 years of data up to and including 2023. 24 years of data. They would show you engagement in the US has not changed a bit. It hasn't changed a bit in 24 years. There's an easy to understand reason for that. The understand reason is for, you got to twist your head here to see that white font that says one size fits all. We're all trying to find the one size fits all fix. Is it schedules? Is it 4-day work week? Is it some other benefit? We're all trying to find it. The answer is right under our noses. The answer is everybody who manages people. They are the answer. They are the answer because if I go way back to when I was challenged to cut turnover, and we held leaders accountable. Later on, when I began to write books, I worked with a professor of industrial psychology who opened my eyes. He would send me, his name is Murphy, my name's Finnegan, or joke as we met on St. Patrick's Day. And what Professor Murphy did, Kevin Murphy, is he sent me emails 2 or 3 times a week, always in the evening. He would say, Dick, go into this URL, use my password, look at the study from Princeton, look at the study from Berkeley. And I learned so many things. But the biggest thing I learned, which was overwhelming, was this. The number 1 reason employees stay or leave or engage or disengage is how much they trust their immediate supervisors. As the middle of the slide says, it doesn't mean every time somebody quits, they didn't trust their boss. It could mean that, but it does mean you're never going to win the retention game if you think you can win it with things. You're never going to win. You're just not. Some companies got to outthing you, but the things just don't matter. There's so many studies that talk about how unimportant pay is relatively to trusting your boss. So you take that idea, and once I knew that, and once I decided, I committed myself to the remainder of my career for how do you cut and turnover? How do you build a solution that is based on research on how do you cut turnover, I realized this was the bedrock. This was the foundation. You had to start here. Here's just one study. And in one book, I contained 25 different studies that all got to the same place. So it says a global consulting firm. That firm is Kenexa. What Kenexa did was they selected 1,000 people who recently voluntarily quit across all industries, all levels. That's why they did 1,000. That's a big number for a survey. They didn't want anybody saying, well, we work in convenience stores. You didn't do convenience stores. And they interviewed some and they surveyed all. And on the survey, they did 5 what they call items, because it's a sentence, not a question. 5 items on a 5-point scale. Rate your pay, your benefits, your development, your advancement, your relationship with your boss. They put all the data into a computer to find statistical correlations. The only one was if you liked your boss, you liked your pay, benefits, development, advancement. If you thought your boss was a jerk, you didn't like your pay, benefits, development, or advancement. And there's lots of gray between I like my boss is a jerk. But the correlation was whether you gave your boss a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 drove what you gave the same level of scores for benefits, pay, development, and advancement. Now, Kenexa in their study, the last sentence is the sentence you see on the screen. Giving more money, developmental opportunities may not be enough. But I would have said it this way. I would have said the prism or the lens through which your employees see their relationship with their manager is how they see your company. It's down there. It's down there. Now, one more thing to think about. My belief is that when you leave work, you get in your car, your truck, your train, you go down the hall, your workroom, whatever you do, that for about 2 hours, give or take some time, you can't stop thinking about work. And you want to think about it, but your thoughts are invaded, in part because you're physically and emotionally tired. You can't fight it off. So here's this thought about this meeting. Here's this thought about this person. Good thought, bad thought. They're not chronological in terms of your schedule. So they're emotional. And so my theory is that the more days you have good thoughts after work, the longer you stay, the more days you have bad thoughts, you don't say. But the critical question is, what things do you think about? And there's a joke line here, which is when you're having dinner and somebody says, how's your day, dear? Nobody says, my day was okay. It was okay. I just wish we had pet insurance, because nobody cares. Nobody cares. Maybe the day your dog gets sick, but nobody sticks around for pet insurance. Nobody joins you for pet insurance. So many things that vendors will tell you matter don't matter, because the things you're thinking about when you're having dinner and somebody says, how's your day, dear? And the things you're thinking about when you're in your car driving home are boss colleagues' duties. You're thinking about day-to-day work. And I mentioned the targeting turnover blog earlier. It gets picked up by a lot of places. Forbes runs it sometimes. Forbes wrote that I said, Curtis, reasons why employees quit is what they talk about over dinner. More importantly, Forbes said, those of us who have hard data must acknowledge this, People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. It's those bosses they talk about over dinner. So sort of funny story. I was in California recently with the top 25 executives of a pharmaceutical firm. Top 25. These people live in big homes. We're in a beautiful ballroom in a hotel. And I told this story, and one of them, picture this, he stood up. He was enraged. He said, I so disagree with you. He said, I tell my people work-life balance. You don't talk about work when you're home. You be with your family. And I thought about saying, you're boss of the year. Now, please sit down. But I said, let's take a chance. We have high-level people here. I'm going to ask you all to be honest. Raise your arm if in the last 2 weeks you've talked about your boss over dinner. Everybody raised their arms. And we teach managers. You're on the menu every night. You're in the menu every night. It's up to you what they say about you, but you can be sure, and you will know as you're listening, that you're talking about your boss over dinner. Maybe not every night, gotta hope not, but pretty frequently, I would guess. So where's this all heading? One place it's heading is studies by people who know how to do studies, who say the reason people quit jobs is not pay. All right. So you have Gallup on the left, which says the number one reason that people quit is employee engagement and culture. Pay just 14%. On the right, you have MIT, which said the number one reason people quit is toxic corporate culture. Pay is the 16th highest reason. I called these people up. I interviewed the people who did this study. I said, how can there be 15 reasons ahead of pay? I understand pay isn't number one. It's got to be 4. It's got to be 6. They said, no, it's 16. And they showed me all the data. Now, what's critical here for our discussion today is these phrases. Number one on the left, Gallup, employee engagement and culture. On the right, MIT, toxic corporate culture. When I learned what they defined those things to be, they are all behaviors done by supervisors. Let's just pause here for a minute. Depending on your role in your company, depending on what you do, you might be able, and you might be with a colleague, you might be able to say, who are the 5 worst managers we have? And you could both write down a list, they'd be the same. It's not like people are hiding if they're really good or really bad at this. They might think they are. But the point is that people, we so often say the reason people leave is a bad boss. I would say it this way. It's also the reason people stay. It's not just about turnover. It's about retention. People stay for somebody who they want to work with. They want to go to work every day. They're glad to see somebody. They're glad to talk about them over dinner. So here's the fix. Here's the sheet off the statue moment. And you can see left to right, it says dollars, goals, standard views, forecasts, accountability. But I want to begin in the middle. So when Chris introduced this session, he mentioned stand reviews. And I invented this concept with a book in 2012, which if you're in HR, went on to become the top-selling book in the history of SHRM. And I did it never expecting it. I'm just glad to write a book. Somebody wanted to publish a book, never expecting it to reach the level of acclaim that it reached. But here's the important thing. To me, once I understood from research, from working with the professor, that the number one reason employees stay or leave is their direct manager, I felt it incumbent upon me to develop an interactive, that's the key word, an interactive way for managers to connect with each member of their teams. And it could have just as easily been non-interactive. It could have been, everybody come take this course on the 7 tips to build trust, and you all do an action plan, you go back to work, and maybe you don't do anything. But what Chris is talking about is meeting one-on-one, every manager being trained. Tim's favorite line is, don't try to do drywall by yourself. Everybody being trained to do stay interviews. I'm going to tell you more about stay interviews in a minute. But it's in the middle because it's crucial, but it can't work unless your executive team changes the way they think. Because if it's HR, remember my circumstance, turnover, HR, go fix it. So we've developed a way to put a cost on turnover. We have an algorithm we use by job that puts a cost on turnover. If I go back to that list of companies, I could tell you across the board, what's each cost? Mount Sinai's cost to lose a nurse in New York City, you're not in New York City, is $93,310. But we put a cost on turnover. We have a method we use. We require finance to participate. Some of you might be in finance. Finance people do a great job because they have processes. They come to work, they open their computers, they look at their screens, they look at their data. They're looking for a way to earn a nickel over here, get more revenue over there, cut this cost over here. They're really looking for coins inside the couch compared to the cost of turnover. And we're going to make sure everybody, including the CFO and the CEO, know the cost of turnover. It's going to become a business issue. In the same meeting, we're going to work with those executives to set retention goals. We ask for a year's worth of data. We put it into our own analysis. We create our own charts of turnover by manager, by length of service, by shift, you name it, to where we can say, okay, here's a goal. And oftentimes it's two goals. Here's a goal for all turnover. Here's a goal for new hire retention. New hire retention. Great Dane trailers losing half their employees. 9 factories losing half their employees in the first 60 days. We set a goal to retain 80% in the first 60 days. And they beat the heck out of the goal. And manufacturing, because I know some of you are in manufacturing, if you can win the new hire goal, you oftentimes win the bigger annual goal. Dollars and goals. Once we have that done, think about it. This converts executives from seeing turnover and retention from an HR thing to an operations thing, which is where it's always belonged. That's how we get that curve, get around that curve. But then we train managers on doing so. We say, look, you got a goal. You're going to be tracked. We're going to track it for you. You're going to perform against the goal and maybe 2 goals. And we're going to train you to do stay interviews. We're going to teach you how to ask 5 questions. I'm going to show you the 5 heavily researched questions. Ask 5 questions. We're going to teach you how to ask them, build up to them and ask them. We're going to teach you how to listen. We're going to teach you how to probe. So you convert 5 questions to 20 or 25 questions. Tell me more. Help me understand. What's an example? We're going to teach you to take notes, and we're going to teach you at the end of the meeting or a few days later to say, here's 2 or 3 things I can do to make work better for you. What do you think? Because turnover happens in that part of the organization. First level leaders. CEOs are first level leaders with their direct reports. We want to solve turnover and thereby, as Chris said with stay interviews, reduce workplace injuries by training and holding leaders accountable. We also ask them to forecast how long each individual employee will stay. Forecasting, we invented it to be simple. Traffic light, green means more than a year, yellow is 6 to 12 months by their choice or hours, red 0 to 6. But then when you look at the accountability component on the end, and it has 2 arrows beneath it, because then we have 2 brand new metrics. We have turnover by leader against goals. We have forecasts by leader against 2 leaves. Don't lose your greens. Be in touch with your people. You can change your forecast any day. So that's the model. That's it. This changes everything. Changes everything. But let's get to the main event, which is stay interviews. So I'm going to skip that and that to get to here. And official definition on the top, when I wrote the book, boring, really boring. Structured discussion, supervisor conducts each individual employee to learn actions, strengthen engagement, retention, organization. But the 3 bullet points below are not boring, because I'm going to guess some of you do employee engagement surveys, regardless of size. By the way, 70% of companies across the US do employee engagement surveys. And if you do them like most people do, you do a survey once a year. The employee takes 45 minutes or an hour to fill it out. They might be in their office or in a meeting room or at home, but they take 1 hour worth of opinions, and that becomes the opinion for a year. And they fill out the form, and you get the results a month later, so it's already a month old. And you look at it, and maybe you have data by manager, maybe you don't, which of course invalidates everything if you don't, based on number 1 reason employees stay or leave, engage, disengage, how much they trust the boss. So what do? You get an employee committee and you say, well, we have to solve communication. Okay, well, we'll do town hall meetings and newsletters. And this is why Gallup will tell you nothing changes. Nothing has changed in 23 years. But notice the middle bullet. It says individual employees, including top performers. When I worked with a professor, boy, write this down if you have a pen. I learned 2 different studies Top performers outperform average performers by 4 to 1. You pay one salary, one set of benefits for somebody who's worth 4. You chew on that one for a few minutes, and you understand that employee engagement surveys treat everybody the same. And of course, they're anonymous, so you don't know what your top performers think anyhow. You better know who they are, and you better keep them. But the third bullet says, put supervisors in the solution seat, which is the way it's always should have been that way from the get-go. So 5 questions. You're going to know I'm a therapist when you hear the thinking behind the questions and the research, because we tried lots of questions till we got it right. Number 1, when you travel to work each day, what things do you look forward to? This question has 2 jobs. The first job is it gets the employee's mind into the here and now of today, into the present tense of today, what I do day to day in my work, because that has proven to be the main driver of why people leave. 1,000 paper cuts. We can't get this right. Nobody listens to me. Da, 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 da. But the second job is it moves the mind from negative to positive. I say negative to positive because we're all built. Our minds are built to be cave people with clubs. Every input into our 5 senses, I do this gesture here because that's where that part of our brain is. Every input into our 5 senses, our first reaction is to cover up. Cover up. Do I need to protect myself? That's the way we're built to survive. So we're going to remove all that stuff, and we're going to ask a question about day-to-day work, and we're going to be positive about it. Question 2 is, what are you learning here? Now, many people think the key to retention is career development. That's bunk. It's just bunk, because so many people don't think about careers, and you don't have careers for everybody. Some people do. And if they do, and you ask this question, you're going to get into a career discussion. But it's intimidating to managers to learn how to manage careers. It's far easier for managers to learn how to manage learning, because if the employee says, I wish I could know more about this, or the employee says, I'm kind of bored, I wish I will, what would you like to learn? Well, I don't know. Well, come back to me next Tuesday and tell me, and I'll make a list too. Or the employee might say, I don't want to learn nothing. I just want to go home at the end of the day. You say, fine. But this is, and I'm laughing because I used to say this is low-hanging fruit. This is so easy to get a win on, until a manager said, no, it's fruit on the ground. Because once you learn, and we train managers, first step here is everybody on your campus is a teacher. That's it. It's not tuition reimbursement. Everybody on your campus is a teacher. You have people who can teach an employee almost anything if she or she has a thirst to learn it. But if that doesn't work, everything is on YouTube. I couldn't run our house without YouTube. Everything is on YouTube. It is easy for you as a manager to help somebody learn. It's not that complicated. You just have to take the initiative to do it. You do it once with one employee, you will learn that you are a learning coach. You can help people learn. So that's the early win. 3 is the surprise. Why do you stay here? This question has 3 different jobs. Number 1, if I know the answer to number 1, what things do you look forward to? Number 3, why do you stay here? I know what makes you happy. Wow, I know what makes you happy. And I can put more of that in your current job or help you get a different job in our company. Second job is it's positive. It's a plus thing. Why do you stay here? Tell me the good things. Why do you stay here? So it prepares the brain with positive news before we go to question 4, which is not positive. When was the last time you thought about leaving our team? What prompted it? The key word to this question is when, because employees are going to think, if you say, have you ever thought about leaving? No, no, I never thought about it. But everybody does. And when you say when, you're saying to the employee, I expect you to think about it. So it's okay to tell me. But 3 has one more really important job. When you ask an employee why they stay, there's a 50% chance or better they're going to say, well, I have to pay the bills. To which we train managers to say, come on, you could leave here and probably get a higher paying job and pay the bills easier. but you don't, and I'm grateful that you don't. I'm grateful, but tell me why you stay. And now the only obstacle is if the manager gets impatient and makes us multiple choice. If they say, well, is it me? Is it the team? So the instruction is put duct tape on your mouth, manager. Make them discover it. You can say, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. Do you want a cup of coffee? Because I want to know why you stay. Make them answer the question because they don't know, because the brain's negative instead of positive. And once they discover the answer inside themselves, then they have to announce it, and their ears have to hear their mouth say it. Very important step. 3 jobs for question 3. Then we say, when was the last time you thought about leaving? What prompted it? How can I be a better boss? What can I do? Winner. Just winner. And I say it not out of pride. I say it because our client companies cut turnover so much. Goal to cut turnover, standard views to do it, forecast, measure. So it just works. So I'm going to race ahead so we have time for questions. But quiz question here, which I'm going to ask and answer for you. Which employees ask for the most in standard views? Pay, development, work-life balance, daily work issues, promotions. One of these is right. The other 4 we invented. Going to count down to 5. You can all give a guess to yourself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hint, 1,000 paper cuts. There's the real hint. What do they talk about over dinner? This is what they talk about. I don't know why we have to do this report. This equipment doesn't work. John's a jerk. If you don't fire John, I'm not going to stay. That's what people talk about over dinner. That's the stuff that drives people out the door. Much more, I think this is an important sentence, much more of what will keep an employee versus have the employee leave is within the control of the first line supervisor than most people think. It certainly isn't pay and benefits. So forecasting red, yellow, green, as I told you, accountability. But now I want to talk about this. With Chris's, support, and I think almost suggestion, we are going to schedule a 2-day workshop somewhere in Massachusetts for any of you who would like to attend. All right. And we have to charge you something, but any of you who would like to attend, and Tim and I are going to run the workshop. And the benefit is we're going to teach you how to cut turnover A to Z on our model. And of course, with cutting turnover comes raising engagement, and also comes, of course, lowering workers' comp costs. So we're hoping that many of you will be interested in this. And, I'm just recapping this, what the slide says with those bullets. 2-day workshop, cut turnover 20% or more based on standard views and more. Experts facilitate, hey, yeah, it's me and Tim. Expert facilitators, exercises, case studies, and all, strategies, and SHRM CE credits available. So I'm going to ask you all if you will write down my email address. It's at the bottom, dfinnegan, Dick, dfinnegan at c-suiteanalytics.com. And email me after this session if you would like to learn more about this meeting. And you and I will schedule a call. You can bring anybody else in your company or your manager on the call, and I'll describe much more about what we're going to do. But this is the way to learn everything.
Dick, I wanted to just jump in a couple of things. I'm going to start with this slide. This contains a lot of the same content that we use to teach 1,000 managers that, because of this training, changed our culture in this very large organization. I think it changed the lives of most of our leaders. It gave them skills that they could go back and use immediately in terms of connecting with their team members. So I've been in this business for 30 years, and it's some of the best training I've ever seen. I think the other thing I also wanted to mention is that you were talking about surveys. And I didn't mention that in the beginning, but one of the things that we found is that the data from the stay interviews at some point we started to be able to use it as an just-in-time engagement survey. And Covenant Health, a big organization, Press Ganey's going to charge about 200 grand to write and administrate and give you back some basic data over about a 4 or 5 month period of time of an engagement survey. And I mean, I think the habit in this country is you do an engagement survey and you feel better so you can check it off. We saved the 200 grand and used the just-in-time data from the stay interviews. That was also very useful. It did help us make some system-wide decisions. But the important part here is that stay interview data allowed us to change our culture one employee at a time. It was amazing, and how quickly we were able to do that. But those are just a couple of points, Dick, that as I enjoyed listening to you talk about this, and it's fun for me to be a part of it now. Wanted to share.
Great, thanks, Jim. First of all, I'm looking at the chat. So let me go backwards for just a minute. So Nicole, you and Rita ask if you can get the deck. Yeah, we'll send the deck to Chris. I just need to put a copyright on the front or something to do it. And I see some others of you have already said, let's talk about the workshop, which we'd be thrilled to do. And I'll get back to you. But as Tim knows, I'm writing a new book. I actually put a chapter in the book on 3 bad ideas and 1 good idea. Okay, so here's the 3 bad ideas. Employee surveys are never going to work unless you get data by leader and you hold them accountable to improve it, and you move them out or fire them if you don't. It's just not going to work. And that's why engagement hasn't changed in all these years. I was speaking at the SHRM Talent Conference in Las Vegas last month, had about 400 people. We were talking about this, and I just spontaneously said, let's do something. Raise your arm if you've ever known of one manager to be fired because of an employee engagement score. What was funny was they were all turning around to look for an arm in the air. There were no arms in the air. There's never an arm in the air on that question. That's one. The second one is employee exit surveys. Some people liken them to autopsies. They are toe tags. They're just dead. They're not going to tell you the truth. Nobody's going to do anything with the data anyhow. And if you Google exit surveys, you'll see the greatest reason why people quit, according to exit surveys, is better opportunity, which tells you nothing. The question is, why did you look? And when people say, I left a job to get more money, probably not. They went looking for a job because they didn't like their job, and somebody offered them a job with more money. The third worthless thing is engagement surveys that give benchmarks to other companies. How are you doing compared to these companies? Because it's just going to stop you. It's going to make you say, well, we're better than those other companies. Therefore, we're as good as we can be. Or we're as good as other companies. I guess that's the best you can do. Or we're not as good as other companies. Well, let's do more employee engagement weeks or something. It just doesn't drive behavior the way we want them to drive. The good thing, by the way, in that chapter is about spans of control. And Tim, I know you could talk about this for a long time, and I'm kind of keeping my eye on the clock because, especially in healthcare, you got 80 to 1, 100 to 1 nurses with that many direct reports. Well, that's treating nurses like robots. We'll talk about that too in our workshop. Let me ask, we're yapping, we have 10 minutes left. Let me ask any of you to turn on your microphone and let us know a question or thoughts. We're really open to getting input here.
Or feel free to put your question in the chat as well.
Yeah. Hey, can I ask those of you, by the way, in the chat who are giving us your email address, if you also email me, okay? How do we turn on the mic? Do we have your mics turned on? Let me see if I can figure that out. I didn't think we did.
Well, the chat's working for sure, so please feel.
Yeah, yeah. You should be able to turn your mic on. I'm sorry if you can't.
Hey guys, this is Chris.
Yeah.
So while we're maybe getting some people commenting in the chat, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming, but I wanted to remind everyone that if like the three facilities we had from Covenant that are Covenant facilities that are in our care group can see such drastic improvements in their safety program, I want to make sure everyone understands that you can absolutely make it happen in any of our other groups, because I would say that long-term care is probably one of the most challenging industries to have good retention, to have good safety records. It's hard work. And for those facilities to see the level of success that they had should be, in my opinion, should be a confidence booster to the other members in all of our groups that we have, whether you're in manufacturing, retail, trucking. We definitely, in our healthcare group as well, you guys can definitely make it happen if someone like that can make it happen. I think, sometimes maybe through this process also, you're like, all right, so this is like there's a lot of HR discussion going on here, but why would Cove Risk have this as a webinar? And I hope you do see the correlation and the connection to injury prevention. Obviously, we're not talking very specific strategies on how to control losses, but I can tell you that it is an absolute that we have clients who their job satisfaction is everything, and it has everything to do with their workers' comp numbers. We've had very similar side by side operations where one organization has 20, 30 claims a year, another one has less than 3 or 4 a year, and they're doing the same side by side work. What's the difference? We have one company that doesn't get to know their people, doesn't pat them on the back when they do a good job. They don't do anything that opens that line of communication or make the employees feel valued. And the ones that do a good job at that have employees that are very committed, will do what's asked of them the right way, follow the safety policies. And maybe there's some frivolous claims that we can avoid that way as well. People that are unhappy with their work are looking for ways to not work. And if workers' comp is a way to do that, you might see that as well. So not saying that we always get fraudulent claims, but I think, every member in here can attest that it's not uncommon to think that that's possible, that some of the claims that get put in either didn't happen or they weren't as bad as they were made out to be. And I think being happy with their work definitely has a correlation to that. But I'll pass it back to you guys.
Chris, you really opened my eyes as we've been planning this webinar about people who call in sick because they have a headache, or file an injury claim because they have a headache or something. Maybe that's an exaggeration, but the point is insincere claim filing because they just don't like their job, they don't like their boss, they're too lazy to quit, who knows what. But I always thought of workplace injuries as injuries as opposed to what you described to me.
Right.
So I'm grateful for that knowledge, and it made all the sense in the world to me.
Yeah, Covenant Health, it wasn't just those claims, but it was also a reduction in apps to leave for taking a leave.
Okay, does anyone want to ask a question, make a comment verbally in the chat? And by the way, David, I'm reading David from Fantini, cameraless, miceless. We know you're there. Just want to let you know. We should all become plumbers and electricians. I know why you said that. Or welders. Okay, anyone else want to contribute anything for now? Okay. Please let me hear from you. D. Finnegan, first name is Dick, D. Finnegan, Finnegan, at c-suiteanalytics.com. And you and I will talk, and I'll tell you more about this workshop we're going to do. Thank you all very much for being here, and I hope above all that you found us to be helpful. Chris, thanks to you, not just for helping us do this, but just for being a good guy. Good guy.
Well, no, I appreciate that. Thank you for everyone that took their time to attend today, middle of the workday. A really nice day where everyone's finally thinking probably to get outside. So we do appreciate you sticking around, and stay tuned for the next step. Cove Risk is going to do whatever we can to try to make this happen, and we'll be communicating with C-Suite Analytics and getting that message out.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.